опоясал теплый вечер. Все, что было с нами, можешь взять с собой и хранить до первой встречи. Ну, а я скажу тебе, самый лучший день у нас сегодня был. И очень хорошо, что он уже прошел, и от последних слов меня освободил. Огорчайся, что твои слова я всерьез не принимаю. Память очень часто бывает не права. То, что было, украшая. Так, что я скажу тебе, самый лучший день у нас сегодня был. И очень хорошо, что он уже прошел, и от последних слов меня освободил. Капля счастья в океане слез растворилась безвозвратно. И не в нашей власти сладость первых грез оживить воспоминания. Ну, а я скажу тебе, самый лучший день у нас сегодня был. Очень хорошо, что он уже прошел, и от последних слов меня освободил. И я скажу тебе, самый лучший день у нас сегодня был. И очень хорошо, что он уже прошел, и от последних слов меня освободил.
Солнце не вставало, где бы утро не гуляло. За рекою, только за рекою будем мы одни с тобой, только мы с тобою. За рекою, только за рекою будем мы одни с тобой, только мы с тобой. Если в небе звезд не станет, теплый ливень нас застанет.
Good evening, everyone. Let's check if the... There we go. It's only one. Good. Perfect. I'm not making that same mistake again. Let's zoom on my face. There we go. Up. 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 A little bit to the right. There we go. That's good. How are we doing this beautiful... What is it? Sunday? Yes, Sunday night. How are we doing tonight? Alright. Wait, why is this show like this? Come on. I'm still figuring it out. Why aren't you like this? Come on. Okay, perfect. Alright, Jesus, it's been a while. It has been indeed a while since we have been here. Reunited once more. So much has changed. So much has happened. We entered the war that we wanted so bad to go into, and then we decided, you know what? This war stuff is proving to be very expensive. Very, very expensive. And now we are very hesitant. Very, very hesitant. Almost regretting. Let me get this down a little bit. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. What are we even talking about? Well, Jesus. Contrary to popular belief, we don't have that many news on the Middle East. That is insane. I mean, there's always things happening in the Middle East. Mainly because of Israel, of course. Jesus Christ. That country just cannot have 1 month of not doing anything, you know? But I feel like so far May has been a fairly relaxing month for the Middle East. We are currently in a ceasefire with, oh Jesus, I'm not. But we are talking about the West. The Western hegemons, Europe and the United States, of course, especially the United States, have decided to start a war. Not going super well indeed, but we are in a ceasefire. It hasn't stopped the United States from bombing Lebanon, for example, because Lebanon is not in the ceasefire deal, and so, you know, geez Louise, you know. But we have other news. We have other news to cover. Mainly, the US is getting outmugged by China. Jesus Christ. This last couple of days, Trump has been visiting Beijing after, I think it's been more than a year now. It's been quite some time since Trump has visited China. And what a trip it has been. What a trip it has been. I think we should start with that. If we're gonna talk about anything, it should be about what has been going on in Beijing. We haven't spoken about Beijing on this stream, on this channel, a lot, because oh my god, Beijing, we actually should, because China has been leading the way of what a superpower. If you're gonna be a superpower, you know, which is already questionable enough, but if you're gonna be a superpower, China's been leading a way of what it kind of should do. You know? It is slowly overtaking the United States in terms of trade. I mean, especially in the last 2 years, its exports have been outflanking the United States. And, however, it's also kind of shown that with all the power you have and with all the power, the money that you have gathered, you can actually, you know, wow, controversial opinion, make the life for your civilians quite nice. We're gonna start looking at China first, then we can also look at some European news, because, you know, everybody likes to talk about the US, what's going on in the US. US is so screwed up, but we don't talk about Europe enough, which is a problem, because we risk having what is happening in the US happen here in Europe as well. Of course, we are having two major events. We are having Keir Starmer refusing to resign, despite continuous pressure from within the party and outside the party for him to resign. And we also have some major news from, well, not major news from Germany, kind of, actually when you read the headlines on Germany, you cannot just but be not surprised about what's going on in Germany. How do we do this? Alright, well, let's start with Beijing, because that's what we've been going on. How are we today? How's the day been going? How's the weekend been treating us? Good? I hope good. The weekend has been fantastic for me. Very relaxing. We are almost at the end of my university trimester. Losing my hair over it, I don't want to get bald. I don't want to end up being bald over this trimester. It's almost finished, but I had a good, relaxing weekend. I think that's very necessary. We have a lot of news from Beijing. Let's see what we got. Now, why is Trump visiting Beijing? Wait, let me pause this music, alright? Why is Trump visiting Beijing? Well, okay, Jesus, we got some things outside. Trump does not like to be outmocked. What he likes is to have allies. However, China has proven time and time again that it does not really want to associate itself with the US as far as its strategic position in the world. China realizes that if you wage continuous war throughout the world, you're just going to end up being hated. And even though you might have some form of a hegemony for a duration of maybe 30 or 40 years, which is kind of what the US has been onto since the end of the Cold War, eventually that hegemony fires back. And we are seeing that with the 21st century and now with the 2020s, where the third world not only is rebelling and forming its own strategic groups that are rivaling the US, which is a very how do I say this, logical conclusion of, just monopoly capitalism, despite, the US having essentially complete geopolitical control following the end of the Cold War. If you make enough enemies, if you eventually, destabilize so many countries, do so many coups d'etats, despite having so many, even if you put so many corporations in control, especially in Latin America, parts of the Middle East, eventually people still remember, and people are going to use their power. Maybe even you installed some kind of a liberal parliamentary democracy, they're going to use that, strike back. And that's exactly what we are seeing, well, kind of all around Latin America, which is what we're going to talk about later, but we're seeing this with China. Now China, where is OBS? China has not been the biggest country during the Cold War, right? It was a rural, pre-industrial country. It was a huge country, huge population, but a pre-industrial country following the Second World War up until the 1980s. It was a country that was struggling. It needed a lot of support from the Soviet Union, but it was not a threat during the Cold War. However, following the end of Cold War and certain capitalist market reforms in the 80s and 90s and onwards until today, China has taken the pacifist route. It hasn't been disillusioned following the end of the Soviet Union. It learned to adapt to a new geopolitical strategy, knowing that it cannot immediately become a rival, right? That was kind of the position of the Soviet Union, though it was not really put into that position on its own, right? The Soviet Union never wanted to rival immediately the United States. It just wanted its own revolution, and it wanted a good welfare for its people. it was put into a position of rivalry when the West, I don't know why I'm still in this, when the West, United States, France, UK decided to invade Russia following the revolution. China was never really invaded by the West. It has decided to take its own position, and what happened is that rather than it becoming a rival to the US immediately, it has decided to be its rival very silently in the beginning, right? It just made the West incredibly dependent on itself, on China, and then make it so rivalry with China is incredibly difficult, right? And unfortunately, it had to do it through a very exploitative way. Of course, everybody knows the stereotype of China producing cheap products. That is because it has become a major exporter of essentially everything that there is. And as it became a massive exporter of everything there is, it has made other countries dependent on China. And now when it's actually trying to take, its own welfare route, of course, people in China, from housing to healthcare to public infrastructure, is incredibly, just leaps ahead, not only the United States, but even Europe in many metrics. But if it tries to challenge the rest of the West in terms of trade or even geopolitical strategy, it's very difficult for the West, or for more specifically the United States, to actually combat this, right? That was something that the Soviet Union didn't do. The Soviet Union was not really a major exporter of anything, right? It had a hard time throughout the entire Cold War, because it was immediately getting just screwed over by the West. And despite having major oil fields, if you are cut off from any kind of trade from the rest of the world, it's very difficult to have a dignified life. If you're only it's not the only producing, your only production, but what China did is that it made other countries very dependent on China, and therefore being able to import a lot of Western products. And then when it actually started to rival the rest of the world in like 2010s, now it was very difficult to sanction China, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing now with the tariffs. Now let's see a video from the CNN about what's going on in China. Now we have a couple of notes, but let's give ourselves a little bit of a, how do I say it, heads up, I guess. Let's start with the first one I have saved here. Is it the one that I meant? No, it's not. Alright, let's get to it. Any day now. Alright, you guys don't need to see my closet. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Here's my tip. Regular viewers know that I have not been a fan of Donald Trump's foreign policy in his second term. From threatening to seize Greenland and annex Canada, unilaterally raising tariffs sky high, to the fiasco of the Iran war, Trump has been reckless, chaotic, and deeply destabilizing. But he might well turn out to have the right instincts and perhaps even the right policy in one crucial arena, the US-China relationship. In Trump's recent interactions with Xi Jinping, we saw a version of him rarely on display. He was respectful, almost deferential, eager to emphasize their personal rapport.
Insane, by the way. Donald Trump, infamous for not being a drinker, due to his, I suppose, traumatic past with his father, who I think was an alcoholic. Trump is essentially like a non-drinker, someone who has said that he has not drank for like 30 years. Taking a little bit of a toast, That's how much this meeting has meant to him, Being able to raise a glass.
Remained formal, disciplined, and never especially warm. The asymmetry was revealing. Donald Trump is obsessed with power. More than ideology or values, of course, he thinks in terms of leverage and dominance. He insults European allies because he understands how dependent they remain on American military protection and access to US markets. Trump senses weakness and exploits it. But with China, he has come to understand something that
I don't know. I'm so sorry. I don't know how you can have a. I don't know how you can look at that man. Not this guy. Trump. Why is this like this? All right. I don't know how you can look at that man. Where is he? I mean, this guy's been. Jesus Christ, he's been scrunching for years. But I don't know how you can look at that man and say that there's any kind of strategy or intelligence going on. I'm so sorry. Like, Trump is many things, and I'm not saying that he's not smart in some aspects, but these days he's just a walking blob of hatred and misogyny and God knows any more things that I can't even probably say here. We cannot look at this guy and say that there's any kind of neurons connecting. So this guy is like, I've been critical of the Trump administration. You know, I have been a Trump critic for many years. I'm not a fan of him, but now you're just glazing him, man. What is wrong with you?
Still struggles to accept emotionally. Beijing has enormous strength of its own, economic, technological, industrial, even military, and can wield it effectively. So Trump has evolved from belligerence toward a more complicated mix of rivalry and cooperation. That may be what this relationship requires. Contrast Trump's visit with the first meeting of Biden officials with their Chinese counterparts.
Okay. Is this video just them glazing Trump and comparing him with Biden and just looking at, like, what, posture? What are you even looking for? Like, there's nothing that you can look, and there's a reason why they haven't played a single clip of Trump fucking talking. It's because he's a mumbling idiot who despite trying to appear as the representation of a superpower, has not stopped but, like, glazing China all he can. Like, Trump in this trip, this last couple of days, has been doing nothing but congratulating Xi and needing, like, his support and wanting his support with his worldview or his geopolitical strategy that he's trying to build. So, I mean, CNN, I don't know what's going on in there, but, like, what are we talking about here? Why are we... And this is not, like, a partisan thing. I'm not looking at it from even, like, a leftist or liberal perspective. I'm just like, what are we talking about? Is this political analysis where we are just looking at Trump's imagined stance? This is not even the reality of what he's speaking.
In Anchorage in 2021, the Americans launched into a televised public scolding of China over human rights, cyber attacks, and the international order. China's diplomats responded angrily in kind. It was less a serious diplomatic exchange than a cable news shouting match. Many centrist Democrats live in fear of being portrayed as soft on China. So they often overcompensate rhetorically, adopting maximalist language and escalating symbolic confrontations. After showing skepticism toward Trump's China tariffs during the campaign, Joe Biden kept nearly all of them in place. Biden never visited China as president, nor did he invite Xi Jinping to Washington. The Biden team endorsed the claim leveled by the first Trump administration.
Okay, I'm bored of you, guy.
Trump's superpower is that he cannot be attacked from the right. He came to power after the 2016 election, railing against Beijing, blaming it for lost manufacturing
China.
Trade imbalances.
Okay, I'm bored. What is this video? I thought I'm going to get, like, a little bit of a catch up what's going on in China, but I'll just get more from my notes. I mean, what happened in Beijing the last couple of days was simple, right? Trump arrived into a country that he deems as kind of what he would like the United States to be. Now, I'm not talking about any kind of public infrastructure or programs or any of the kind of semi-cool shit that China is doing. No, I'm looking at just the dependence that the rest of the world has on China. That's it. Because that's what the United States has been for a better part of the last century and the early part of this century, right? As a result, the rest of the world is dependent on, was dependent on the United States for almost fucking everything. Not only on materials, but more specifically on finance, right? The dollar has become the centerpiece of the world economy. You needed the United States. And it was never more apparent than the 2008 financial crisis, where European banks, all confident with how the crisis happening overseas in Washington is not affecting us here in Europe, very quickly realized around 2009 that shit just hit us right back, because we became so dependent on the US, and that dependency has not disappeared necessarily in terms of finance. Your dollar is still the central currency for conversion of essentially everything, but because of the euro, we have gained a semi-autonomy here in Europe, but we have become very dependent on China in terms of imports, right? China is, I think, right now the world's biggest exporter, and the US is kind of lacking behind, right? And Trump loves that. He loves that power. Maybe he also likes the Chinese Communist Party's political arrangement. Maybe he likes that there is one party in power, right? I'm not saying that. He would probably love the Republican Party to be the only party in power. Not saying no. I mean, there is a pattern of Trump really liking dictators, right? Now, I'm not having a whole debate about how the Chinese political system works, because it's much more complicated than just dictatorship. But it works very differently than, let's say, parliamentary liberal democracies that we are used to here in the West. However, he likes the aesthetic, right? Trump is a big aesthetics guy. Let's be real. He does not know shit about anything. He does not know shit. He doesn't know shit about the economy. He doesn't know shit about his own companies. He just inherited a bunch of money. And let's be real, running a business, once you have that much money, is not that difficult. And somehow, Trump failed at that anyway, right? So let's not look at Trump as a very smart guy. Now, I'm not saying that this whole trip was just Trump, right? As we're going to see in a second, Trump brought a lot of friends with him. Now, what Trump did a couple days ago was bring some friends.
Nearly a year ago, President Trump and Elon Musk's relationship was basically in tatters, as Musk was posting about the president appearing in the Epstein files, which we didn't know about at the time, also calling for a third Trump impeachment. That was when the president responded by saying that Elon Musk had, quote, lost his mind. Well, now the two of them are back together in Beijing tonight, as Elon Musk was seen taking in the sights, twirling around with his phone as he waited for the president alongside of America's
I'm sorry, man. What is that? What are you doing, Elon? Come on. Read the room a little bit, man. Look at all these other parasites. Let's be real, that's what they are. Let's look at... We got, this is the advisor, there's a Nazi. You got the cabinet, but you got Tim Cook here. You got a few other CEOs. And this guy is he's just having an Instagram story. Now, I don't know if there's like a genuine Instagram story of whatever Musk was doing there, but who are you sending that to, man? Because we know that all your kids hate you.
CEOs. He was also
what are you doing?
With Apple CEO Tim Cook.
Oh my God!
As he also walked around
Man, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, we know Tim did not want to take that photo. We know that photo was probably arranged by a little musky boy right here. Yeah, that's hard to watch. I'm sorry. I did not really want to put Musk back into the narrative. Goddamn, he became so irrelevant once Trump dropped him. Yeah.
son
Jeez.
at those high-level meetings that have been playing out in Beijing.
Oh yeah, his
Joining me
kid.
now
He
to
has a
talk about
kid.
all of
He
this
still
is
has
the
some
tech
kids.
journalist and CNN contributor, Kara Swisher. And Kara, just first off, what's your view been of this visit and the trillions of dollars of net worth that are accompanying President Trump?
Well, he took 17 CEOs and just 3 diplomats on the plane. I mean, it's an interesting. It feels like a Chamber of Commerce meeting to try to drum up business for the United States when there's some very serious issues, as you just noted earlier, about Taiwan and some other things that Xi was there in a very strategic way. This felt more like you want to buy some planes, but that's okay. That's one way to do diplomacy, I suppose. And Elon being there, breaking up is hard to do, I guess. And so they're back together because the money and the convenience and the things Elon wants, especially as he moves into this next period where he's going to take SpaceX public and stuff like that. So he wants to cooperate with the current administration.
Yeah, I mean, in China's...
It's a very Musk thing to do, to just keep on begging and begging and begging people that are more powerful than him to get back into the game, It's like a cycle, the cycle of life. Musk gets into position of power. He becomes very confident with his position. He fucks up, either insults someone or he's just really fucking boring and unfunny and cringy. He gets kicked out of the function, and then he gets hired again because he just starts begging again, and the cycle repeats. I don't know if I made that very clear. Basically, remember the Epstein files? Yeah, we should not stop talking about that, but we remember those emails between Musk and, I don't know if it was Epstein, just begging to go back on that island. At this point, I don't even believe that he's a pedophile. I feel that Musk just wanted to go there because he didn't want to get left out. Musk just had FOMO. That's all it was. Musk just had FOMO over being fucking left out of every social event because of just how genuinely boring, unfunny, and cringy he is. And he just keeps begging. And unfortunately, because he has so much money, there's a lot of people that still want him on board. Except for Epstein, apparently, because he got ghosted in that email. Anyway.
The most important market outside the United States for Tesla. He's
for
got a
him,
big
for
factory
sure.
there, makes half of their cars. Do you think that is what has played a role in the mending of this relationship between the two of them? Because he wants to be able to go with the president on trips such as this?
Well, everything is transactional with these people. Every one of them on that plane was transactional, whether it was the NVIDIA CEO or Tim Cook or anyone else. These are people with different things they want from the president and from China. In case of Apple, they have extensive consumers. They have extensive amounts of consumers and creating stuff there. Obviously, NVIDIA wants to sell these chips into China, and they used to have a pretty big market share. Now it's very low, and they want to get back in there. Elon has all manner of different things he wants. And Boeing, of course, selling jets to China and things like that. And so they want to be there, and that makes sense for them to be there from a financial point of view. I'm not sure if someone called it summitry. I'm not sure anything got done, but maybe they'll have another summit, and that's always a good thing to keep talking with China because we need to. And one of the things that disappointed me is they didn't have a talk on the kind of things we want to do around AI the way we did maybe around nuclear weapons. But that was a group of AI cheerleaders, so you're not going to have anything resembling discussions about safety or anything else.
It also, it's a reminder of the stark contrast in the first Trump term and how the business community treated the president then and what we're seeing now. So many people were critical of that inauguration seating chart, but this is kind of evidence of probably a big driving factor for that, so they could go on trips like this.
Well, as I said, it's a coin-operated presidency, and they figured out very quickly that you put money in and you get stuff out. Like Andreessen Horowitz spending the most money towards the midterms. They understand it's a very small amount of money to spend $115 million because they get so much more. They get billions and billions out of it, and so they've sort of figured out it's a cheap way to get what you want, and that's what they're doing. And they will continue to do that because shareholders, as I've said over and over again, are their biggest goal, and that's fine, I suppose. That's what they're doing, but it's pretty explicit.
Well, you mentioned NVIDIA, and tonight Reuters is reporting that the United States has cleared 10 Chinese firms to buy their second most powerful AI chip, which obviously could be a huge opportunity to make money. But I mean, even Republicans in Washington have raised concerns about which Chinese companies are getting access to what, given the competition that's playing out here.
Yeah, I recall it was Donald Trump who said that and was absolutely correct. It's the one thing I agreed with him on in the first term was, the dangers of China getting our most important technology. And their argument is they're going to build it themselves, and they sure are, but we're still ahead here. And you shouldn't, I've heard the arguments on the other side, and it's just, he wants to get in these markets. And so Jensen Huang is going to do whatever he can to be very close to Trump, including racing up to Alaska to get on the plane with him.
Yeah, Trump, there have been reports that he wasn't going, and Trump made clear that he did have a seat on Air Force One.
Who cares?
They're done. They're just done. Well, that's the thing. The most, I guess, entertaining part of this trip has maybe just been the behavior of the people involved, more specifically. We have looked at Musk, and we have also looked at Trump. Other than that, this trip, while being the first in this term for Trump, has been not really geopolitical, or how do I say it? It hasn't really spoken about the things going on in terms of wars, territory, hegemony, right? It's been more specifically about trade. Now, of course, trade is arguably the most important part of the world economy, right? So it is important. It hasn't just been very specific about, like, for example, Iran and things going on there. Now, what Trump was most likely, because this trip has been planned months up ahead, Trump has probably been very enthusiastic to come in there, just like ready to be welcomed and respected, because he expected the US to immediately war over Iran, and he wanted to come in like full intimidation into China's doorstep to show who's the boss. Now, of course, that has not happened. The United States has not won the war in Iran. It has not defeated the Ayatollah. And despite the ceasefire right now, it kind of looks like the US just kind of is like regretting what they started, especially because of the Strait of Hormuz, the pausing of trade in there. Is it going to be reopened? Is it going to be not? We're going to see. It's kind of still like a developing situation right now, at least what I've seen yesterday. So what this trip kind of ended up being was just talking about trade. Now, we already saw it in that clip here somewhere, if I find it. Yeah, but, and I can look at it again. Give me 1 second. Give me one second. Alright. Because it's a TikTok. Right? We be hip like that. Alright. Now, as we saw, Trump pulled up with his gang of billionaire CEOs right by his side, next to his political strategist, just like full on there on display what the United States is, right? No filter, no mask. This is what the United States is. It's just a bunch of corporations pretending to be a democratic country. Let's look at this. Where is the sound? Where is the sound? I don't know how TikTok on the... there it is. There we go.
And Tesla and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang getting off of Air Force One in Beijing with President Trump. They are just two of more than a dozen American business and tech leaders joining the president's trip to China this week. The list also includes Apple CEO Tim Cook, as well as representatives from Meta, Qualcomm, Boeing, Visa, Blackstone, and others. Jensen Huang was a last-minute addition to the trip, flying to Alaska to join President Trump's plane late Tuesday. Some of these companies and their leaders already have deep ties to China, like Cook, who has built a massive manufacturing ecosystem in China for Apple, and Musk, Tesla was once praised by Chinese officials as a successful model for collaboration between US and China. There are also companies that could stand to gain something from this trip. Nvidia, for example, has been pushing China to allow it to restart imports of its chips following a US-China trade tussle. The US eased its own restrictions on exports of some of Nvidia's less advanced chips last year. Boeing has also been in negotiations for sales of its planes to Chinese airlines. A major issue hanging over this summit is the AI race between the US and China, with both sides standing to make potential gains. The US would like to see China ease restrictions on exports of rare earth minerals needed to make things like batteries, chips, solar panels, and data potential gains. The US would like to see China ease restrictions on exports of rare earth minerals needed to make things like batteries, chips, solar panels, and data centers, while China might seek to gain greater access to advanced AI technology from the United States. But there's a fine line for both sides to walk, with neither wanting to see their rival get too far ahead in this one in Beijing. With Nvidia CEO Jensen
I'm looking for...
in Beijing with
Look at this one. Look at this. Capitalism personified. Now, do any of these CEOs want to be there? Well, yes and no. Do they want to be there because they are dependent on China for trade, more specifically for its exports, as the video mentioned, of rare minerals? Yes. Do they want to be there with the Trump administration? No. Now, I'm not going to moralize billionaires, right? But it kind of goes to show that the Trump administration, despite wanting to seem like it's just a bunch of guys that like each other, it is just this very fine, like, critical line of relationships between the political class of fascists who like the aesthetic of fascism but don't really know what to do about it, and billionaires who seek to gain from it because of what fascism can do, and that is essentially destruction of labor and colonial expansion, right? And that's why they are there. Now, despite trying to look tough in this photo, a lot of these billionaires don't like each other, right? But they are in the same basket, and they are there because they see that this meeting can actually lead towards something long term. Now, what that is, we're going to see. China has the upper hand because it has something that is arguably more important to the West than vice versa, right? And the United States already kind of threw a tantrum. Yeah, a tantrum over China essentially restricting its export, as the video said, right? The exports of its rare minerals, right? As a result, Trump was like putting tariffs of China because China was putting tariffs on the US, right? And we had the tariff war. Now this meeting could essentially loosen that up a bit. The result of it, I don't know. Trump also was hoping, wait, what is the video? So I can put it on me. The Trump administration was also hoping setting up a board of trade with China to manage commercial disputes between the two countries. Trump just loves his little boards, I see. Trump just loves setting up boards that kind of lead to nothing or are just controlled by the United States to manage stuff. Now, the Board of Peace, the only reason that it's actually a thing is because of the UN, right? It was set up by, well, the US pressured the UN to set it up, and it actually became a thing. I kind of lost track of where it's going, but it essentially became completely managed by the United States. Now he wants to create a board of trade with China. I don't know how that would be any different from what it is now. I mean, it's not like communication is the problem, right? You just pick up the phone. The problem is that China is winning, and the US could actually strategically handle it in some ways. It's just that Trump's ego is either too big or they are completely incapable of doing economics, right? Because at the end of the day, the US is still a hegemon, right? I'm not talking about war, I'm talking about trade. And they have a lot of an upper hand. It's just that they are losing. The US is losing is because its own population is suffering, right? Productivity is down, not because you're not squeezing the shit out of your workers. And that's exactly the opposite. You are squeezing the shit out of your own workers. And as a result, productivity is down. China has realized that, hey, if you give a good life to your workers, your working class, they're going to be productive. They're going to work harder. They're going to have children, right? You build the infrastructure for those children. You build the cities. You literally take 0.5% of your GDP. It's probably more, but I'm over-exaggerating. But you take a small investment out of what you have, the profits that you have from all this trade, all these exports, all this production, and you put it towards actual infrastructure. People are going to be happy. People are going to have children. People are going to... Your population is going to expand. They're going to have money to actually consume your product, and your economy is going to grow. China, despite being run by a communist country, communist party, has just understood capitalism. You know? It has learned from the mistakes, or from the mistakes of the past. Not its own, but like historic. It's realized, as long as we kind of like don't let capital completely overtake everything, and we give something to the workers, they're going to be happy, productivity is going to be up, life expectancy is going to be up, which means workers are going to be working for a longer time, kids are going to be born, yasta, right? To finish this off, or maybe not, there is a video exactly about what I'm talking about right here. God damn it. Jesus Christ. I hate how TikTok works on this. Fucking...
What happens when you don't incinerate tax money?
Oh my god. TikTok on the desktop is probably worse than cancer. What the fuck is this?
This is what happens when you don't incinerate tax money. This is the East Chongqing Railway Center that just got completed, and it is nuts. 1.2 million square meters. They built this in 3 years. This came out quicker than the next season of Severance. 15 platforms, 29 tracks, and capable of hosting up to 16,000 passengers. We're still debating over here whether we should build high-speed rail. It's cost them $8 billion, which is like, I don't know, like a week of military spending in this whole Iran war, and maybe like, you know, a fraction of what we gave to Argentina. Like, go argue with the wall, please. This is objectively good. This is nice. And this is quick and effective uses of fucking money. It literally has hotels, 5-star malls, every kind of amenity that you would ever want. And there's still people in my comments that don't think that this would be good in the US. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, actually, what do you want your money being spent on?
Our building, Arc de Trump.
This is what happens when you don't incinerate tax.
This is all that I need to say. This is it, right? I can, case in point, right there. But China's a dictatorship. China is a dictatorship. The US is a fucking dictatorship as well. Are you telling me the two parties that essentially share the exact same economic neoliberal ideology is not a dictatorship? The only difference, and I'm not talking about just since Trump, okay? The only difference between the Democrats and the Republicans for the last fucking ever, probably since the 50s, or maybe Nixon. You could say, Nixon ruined it all. Reagan ruined it all. There was not one fucking person that ruined it all. It's how the system is set up. It works like this in Europe here as well. Here it's a little bit easier to for a smaller party to gain ground and actually have its seat in the parliament. But we see it all anyway, right? I live in Spain. You know, the two parties has been fucking turning here for the last 30 years since the end of the dictatorship. The Partido Socialista Obrero de España and Partido Popular, right? Whoa, Socialist Party? No, right? The Socialist Party of Spain is essentially the Democrats, right? For the last 30 years, they've been going through a phase of neoliberalism that you cannot even imagine. The only good thing about this party is Pedro Sanchez's stance against Israel. It's nice. I like it. But it's not enough. And the other one, Partido Popular, is kind of like what the Democrats are now in the United States. Just turning, right? And then you have Vox, which is like the fascists, right? What I'm trying to say is that it doesn't matter if it's Europe or the United States. Even if you have plural party system, it's going to end up being between two large monopolized parties that are going to keep arguing on paper against some things, but at the end they don't actually provide any different economic strategy to what's going on now, right? Show me the difference between Democrats and Republicans on the economy, or migration, or even foreign policy, right? Obama was just as destructive in the Middle East as Bush. Right? Biden allowed a genocide to happen with not raising a fucking thumb off the table, just like Trump is doing now. There's no difference between these two parties. And I'm not even talking about the economy, where both parties have adopted an absolute strategy of neoliberalism since Reagan. The two parties were maybe slightly different during the New Deal, where the Democrats, I think it was the Democrats at the time, right? Roosevelt adopted a more Keynesian economic strategy of fiscal responsibilities and expansive like expansion policies towards the economy instead of the Republicans, right? Awesome, perfect. That was nice because it was a necessary strategy in times of crisis. But eventually these two parties become the same. Right? And that's what we're seeing here now. So I don't give a shit about a dictatorship when it comes to China, because it's shit like this that's cool. It's shit like this that's cool. When you have a one party, political debate still happens. You just it's not about having plural parties or not. It's about how you organize your parties within, and it's about meritocracy, and it's about the kind of ideas that not only serve a certain political class, and a class of owning individuals, but rather having a party that serves the entire population. And I'm not saying that capital is gone from China. I'm simply saying that China is more disciplined when it comes to capital. It actually prosecutes its capitalists. Actually holds them accountable when they do exploitative practices on its workers. And we can get into the debates of what happens when you still have capital in a country and how it slowly overtakes the party. It's possible, right? It's definitely historically proven. But so far, China is holding strong when it comes to actually ensuring a pretty decent lifestyle for its population. Not in all ways, but no country is perfect. Now, we've been on this for too long. Let's finish this segment, with a Daily Show clip. Because why not? Mogged, by the way. I forgot to mention this. You know, one thing I love about, like, the way that Xi Jinping presents himself, and just in general, how the Chinese have always presented themselves towards the United States, specifically Trump, is how they completely are able to roast and outmog, let's be real, Trump, by just doing nothing. By just being slightly more sophisticated or, like, smart than them. Just straight face, no facial expressions, no smile, and just hitting them with the facts, hitting them with what they want, and in this case, roasting the fuck out of him, right? Trump's reaction probably was like, yeah, Thucydides rap, and he had no idea what he was talking about, right?
Brain go up a flight of stairs. Come on, all right, President Trump
is beating us with the fast food stands. We cannot allow that to happen. China cannot have more Arby's than the United States. That simply cannot happen. Do we want a future where China has more KFCs than the United States? No.
aside China.
I have a presentation that I did not prepare for the next, and I went out drinking the day before. So, what did you think about the latest report about Germany's position on Israel? Great, incredible. Couldn't have said it better. You know, what we got in front of us right here is a very complicated situation, as we see, and the debate is going to be very, very thorough. Can't wait to see what the two parties get up to next. It's literally me, except for the accent. Way, baby, the American way. Well, I didn't talk about Taiwan so much, is because simply there's not much to talk about. This entire trip was just like a long I don't even know what to compare it to. Just a long game of you stop. You know, like the whole Taiwan situation is that the United States does not have that much of a stake in Taiwan. It's a strategic place, right? Historically, Taiwan has been essentially another satellite of the U.S. against China, but it's not much development. Let's do a little transition. A little bit of a groove. Wait. There we go. Bueno. That is Beijing. Let's move on, because there's more to talk about, and actually more interesting things to talk about than the US and Beijing, because let's be real, it was funny. It's funny. It's funny when the US just goes in with like full mask off, trying to be tough, but actually just kind of revealing what they are all about. Coming in with their CEOs, not even really realizing how that looks aesthetically. Like this, despite Ronald Reagan, being the president that just completely normalized and set the ground for oligarchy to happen, not just in the United States, but all throughout the Western world, essentially the rest of the world. The fall of the Soviet Union, the insane neoliberalization that Europe has went through, and of course the United States as well. He never did shit like this. He wouldn't dare. He knew how optically that would look in that moment, coming in with the CEOs of your biggest industries. He knew that. He needed to play the labor game, and he was good at that, right? I mean, he was a leader of a Screen Actors Guild for a while. Even the biggest neoliberal president of its era would not do something like this. And this is the product. This is what you get when you have a complete buffoon administration trying to act tough in power, right? It's fascism without the nice aesthetic mask. It's Mussolini and Hitler and Franco and Pinochet and all the fascists without the glamour and without the uniforms and without the makeup and the anthems and all of that. This is what fascism is. It's just fat old fucks walking down a hallway with a bunch of capitalist industrialists by their side. That's fascism for you. And then also invading countries and beating up protesters and labor organizers and minorities in their own countries. That's fascism for you. It doesn't need to get all that sophisticated. It's just the reaction of capital against revolutionary progress. That's what fascism is. And the Trump administration has just shown us how lame, how fucking lame it really is. Now, let's get towards some German news. We have news from Germany coming a couple days ago, I think 2 days ago. Not fun. I mean, honestly, when is the last time that German news was fun? When is the last time that German news has been fun? Let me just pull up the article. Here we go. Germany is back on its dictatorial, genocide-supporting, wrong side of history way that it has been since probably its inception, but at least in the last 100 years. Germany, with the German intelligence, more broadly speaking, the German Federal Office for Protection of the Constitution has declared certain pro-Palestinian symbols as extremist and anti-Semitic, right? We have seen Germany being on this path of course, this has been probably the most, next to the UK and the US, the country that has suppressed pro-Palestinian protests the most, right? Essentially any kind of protest with a Palestinian flag, symbol, like a very out there symbol. If you were wearing those symbols, you were immediately arrested or even beat up in certain situations. Now, there's nothing new. It's very normal. Germany's support of Israel goes back over its guilt of I don't know, can I say the event, the Holocaust, right? Its guilt over the Holocaust has why is it my closet showing again? Has led it to support Israel. In probably, if they had more money, they would be more supportive than the United States. But of course, the United States is a superpower. It's a little different. What I'm trying to say is that the German government, the German state, despite huge pushback by its population, huge protests in Germany against Israel due to its genocide that is nearing, 3 years is gonna be the end of this year. The German state has just keep pushing and pushing and pushing its narrative. It even has a name. It's called Staatsraison. Is it that? Staatsraison? Essentially meaning a reason of state. Saying that Germany's reason of its existence, even now following its unification in the late 80s or early 90s, its existence is always going to be inherently tied to the state of Israel, no matter what happens, due to its guilt over the Holocaust. Now, of course, the Holocaust was a terrible event, one of the worst events in human history, especially modern history, but that was happening again, right? The Holocaust is kind of happening again. It's happening in Palestine, occupied Palestine, by Israel. Now, it's happening by the Zionist state, pretending to be Jewish, and Germany is defending them with all the might that it has. Now, looking at the story, Germany has always been very pro-Israeli, and being a protester in Germany has always been probably the worst. You will always get the worst treatment. Getting beat up or arrested for simply expressing your criticism of Israel, right? Which, of course, kind of goes against the whole freedom of speech thing, but as we can see, anti-Semitism is baked into the constitution of Germany. And because of that, the rules of where the rules of where criticism of Israel starts and anti-Semitism ends are, well, there's a clear barrier, but for the German state there it's non-existent, right? Criticizing the state of Israel is equivalent to being anti-Semitic in many cases. Now, symbols such as a watermelon, symbols such as the Handala, which was the ship that was carrying aid to Palestine, and slogans such as Intifada, right? I think more specifically Yalla Yalla Intifada are now, I don't know if they are now officially just like considered anti-Semitic, or if they are kind of like on the iffy zone, declared by the intelligence of signs of anti-Semitism. No matter what, they are now fully like declared by the German state as no zones for Palestinian protesters, as if they needed a line, because they just arrest you over anything these days, and cops are never held accountable. Now, there is not that much to talk about when it comes to this. I mean, we have expressed on this channel probably more than anything else our criticism of not only Israel as a genocidal occupying state, but also Germany fully backing it, no matter the administration. I mean, it is so baked into German society, at least in terms of political parties, that even parties such as Die Linke, the left party in Germany, it's very torn. I mean, it is very tied. It's not 100%, but even leaders of the Die Linke party are very pro-Israel, right? There are full anti-fascist groups that are also Zionist groups at the same time, over the guilt of the Holocaust. Now, of course, that guilt should very much be present, but Jesus fucking Christ, do a little bit of, I guess, some critical introspection of what you are doing. You have not only committed a genocide 80 years ago, you are now fully aiding another country committing a genocide. And that's not coming out of my mouth. That is coming out of the mouth of countless human rights groups and political analysts throughout the last 3 years. You know, this is the UN, this is Amnesty International, countless media groups. I mean, Germany has helped create definitions of genocide and human suffering due to its involvement in the Holocaust, involvement being the perpetuators of the genocide. And now that it's fully aiding a country doing exactly the same thing, it turns the corner or turns around and just ignores its own definitions of a genocide. It's nothing new, but it is news. Germany has been one of the biggest arms suppliers for Israel in recent years, from October 7th, 2023, almost 3 years ago. Germany authorized arms sales to Israel totaling more than 492 million euros, which is around $567 million. $500 million going to aid a genocide, you know, in arms and technology. Fun! Of course, fun. We can look at a quick video.
I can think of no greater honor than standing shoulder to shoulder with our Israeli friends on this.
Die reden vor einer Rechtfertigung von 7. Oktober. Wo ist die Rechtfertigung von 48? Wo ist die Rechtfertigung von 64? Wo ist die Rechtfertigung von 78? Wo ist die Rechtfertigung von 2006? Wo ist die Rechtfertigung von 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 und 22? Ihr redet über Hamas, redet mal lieber über Israel.
Yeah. I mean, this dates back decades, right? This is not something new. Germany has always been very unapologetically pro-Israel, despite the occupation. Israel, this is not something, I feel like I don't even have to say this at this point. This did not start in 2023. This did not start in October of 2023, October 7th. This is not something new. The genocide is not new. It was just more hidden. It was just a bit more systemic. It was an occupation before. Starvation, systemic killings, right? Like, it was arguably, I don't want to say worse before, because holy fucking shit how many people have died in the last 3 years. I actually kind of forgot the complete death toll at this moment since the ceasefire. Death toll? I should know this. I'm sorry. This is from February of this year. Right now it is... Okay. It says that 75,000. It has been way more throughout this entire time. But because counting the bodies and counting what actually constitutes as a death by Israel or death by debris is very different. Or especially death by malnutrition is also very hard to determine. People are like, the numbers are all over the place. You know? But no. Israel has killed more than 100,000 Palestinians, right? But before it was much more systemic, right? Israel would just like go into neighborhoods and kill people, right? Or randomly drop a bomb on a residential building out of nowhere and kill, I don't know, 100 people. It was a genocide, but it was not as explicit as it was, as it has been in the last 3 years. So Germany has always been for that, despite having the intelligence of what has been going on. Partly because of strategic reasons. Of course, Germany is part of NATO. It is in the Western hegemonic camp. So Israel has always been a strategic partner in the Middle East, waging wars, especially in the last 25 years, since the start of the war in Iraq. But it is, especially for Germany, it has almost been like a moral duty, right? The thing is that Germans are guilty over a genocide against Jewish people. They are not guilty over a genocide, period, right? Now that it's committing a genocide against people of Arabic descent? Arabic people. It doesn't feel like it's got the moral obligation, you know? Because racism is very baked into European society in general, right? Just ask a European what they think about the Romani people, and they will very quickly turn into the Third Reich, you know? Very, very, very Nazi. What else is there to say about this? What is the name of this? What's the name of this? Oh yeah, this is something else. Sorry, I want to go at that later. Germany's Federal Office of Protection of the Constitution describes these groups and individuals as being united in their hostility towards Israel, whose right to exist they regularly refuse to recognize. Wait, let me look it up here. Refuse to recognize, and against which they often agitate in a manner contrary to international understanding. This must have been written by like a high schooler. Being united in their hostility towards Israel, whose right to exist they regularly refuse to recognize. Now, you're already coming from a point where Israel deserves a right to exist. No state deserves a right to exist on their own. Every state exists, and sometimes they cease to exist. There is no universal right to exist. There is an individual's right to exist, technically, baked into not only constitutions of individual countries, but also international law. But a country does not have a right to exist. Israel does not have a right to exist. A country does not have a right to exist. And there is no fucking country that agrees with that more than Israel. Israel is not really hiding the fact that it wants to capture very large parts of the Middle East. It has colonial ambitions. Right now, those colonial ambitions are ever more clear, have never been more clear than in Lebanon, capturing huge chunks of territory in its south and collaborating with Western businesses, erasing them from maps and capturing them. Does Lebanon have a right to exist? Ask Israel. And against which they often agitate in a matter contrary to international understanding. What does that mean? What is agitate in a matter contrary to what is international understanding? Has there ever been an international understanding towards anything? So as you can see, they had to come up with a very sophisticated way of saying, we don't like that there is, I guess, leftist pro-Palestinian activism happening against a country that we love, Israel. Referring to protests against Israel's genocide in Gaza, Germany's Board of whatever protection of the Constitution says that particularly in Berlin, statements or displays with anti-Israel and sometimes anti-Semitic content are regularly made or displayed. Now, of course, there is a rising tide of anti-Semitism. That is not something I'm going to refute right here. It is. It exists, right? It happens. However, conflating those two terms, conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, is just making anti-Semitism larger. I personally know people that display I personally know people that say anti-Semitic remarks as a result of what is going on in Gaza. By confusing anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism as if they are the same thing, which they are not, look up the fucking definition, and then looking at what is going on in Israel, and that is something that you cannot hide. It's simply not something you can hide, especially with technology of the 21st century. There are many people that are going to be like, oh, am I anti-Semitic for saying this is fucking horrible? This is a genocide? I am a anti-Semite now. And I know so many people, unfortunately, that have become kind of anti-Semitic as a result of what is going on in Gaza. Not because they hate not because they hate Jewish people out of the bloom, but because they hate what is going on in Gaza. They hate what Israel is doing against Gaza. And as a result, rather than having a materialist understanding of why this is going on as a result of decades of colonialism and aid from the West to become a strategic point, and that is my job, they just directly tie Judaism with genocide. Because Israel, for its entire existence, has wanted to become the representation of Judaism. To say that we are Judaism. We not only deserve this land that totally has been, completely empty before, not. But we are the representation of Judaism. And as a result, that is extremely dangerous, because then when the country is doing horrible, horrendous, hideous shit, people conflate it with Judaism. Because that's exactly the result of this interaction. So yes, there is going to be anti-Semitism coming from, of course, far-right, neo-Nazi camps, as it is, right? And the rise of the far-right is very, coincides with the rise of anti-Semitism. But there's also going to be a lot of people who are sympathetic towards the Palestinian cause being like, hey, if this is anti-Semitic, then I am anti-Semitic because this is horrible. And that is unfortunate, and that is horrible, and it shouldn't happen. And we should not conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. But it is a result, and it is the fault of both the state of Israel, and they don't give a shit, and governments of Germany and the United States and all Western powers that support Israel, that there is a rise of anti-Semitism. So don't blame leftist organizers and groups that are organizing to stop a genocide for rise of anti-Semitism. But of course you would have to do some introspection, some soul searching to realize that, oh, actually it's been Israel all along, and that's why anti-Semitism is on the rise. All right, let's finish off this segment with
They want from me to.
sorry. Middle East report. Police in Berlin carried out a forceful crackdown across Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Has it been this week or no? This was back in April, right? During one arrest, a protester said that they were being targeted for being Palestinian and because authorities are committing to partaking in the genocide. Mind you, and this is reported on many cases, these are just people protesting peacefully, right? This is no riot, this is no throwing of anything, of any kind. This is the kind of democracy, the kind of freedom of speech that we have here in Europe. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly, of protest, has always hung by a thread of whatever mood and whatever administration we have in power. The moment that mass organizing becomes a threat to the establishment, becomes a threat to power, all of the sudden those constitutional rights that we have thrown out the window, right? Just look at the right to strike, something that has not really been a thing until the 1920s, 1930s in Germany specifically, and still strikers get beaten up by the police because that's the function of the police. And whenever a state does not like your behavior, gets rid of you. Doesn't matter if it's baked into the constitution or not. And it's never more clear than in Germany. Because anti-Semitism can be, I guess, used for any kind of behavior. And in this case, apparently protesting a genocide peacefully, whether it's a little blockade or it's a little protest with flags, can land you in a fucking chokehold being carried out by the German police. Our rights under a capitalist, even parliamentary democracy always hang by a thread. It's always just up to the powers to determine if we are a problem or not. And you can notice, and there's a photo, and I would like to find it, but I don't have it right now, of a guy with a Palestinian flag being arrested by 5 police guys, and a guy with an Israeli flag doing the exact same thing, alone, left alone. Is that the freedom of assembly, the freedom of protest that we pride ourselves on here in Europe? Or is it just a big lie that we tell ourselves to feel better about the rights that we have? No. Sorry, I'm taking a little break, okay? Groove with me for a second. Come on, we don't have to go verbal all these times. Hello. Who is watching us? Say something to the chat. I wanna talk with people. Do you have questions? Do you have anything that I can... You know, I mean, I'm used to talking with myself, but come on, give me something. Give me something. It's a Sunday night. 11 p.m. What are we doing? How has our week been? Are there any fun stories that we can talk about? Doesn't even have to be political. Just tell me something. Oh, alright. Well, that guy disappeared. I bored him. Never mind. Well, we're going to talk about one more story today. I would like to do these streams a lot more often, so we actually talk about what's going on rather than mention things every once in a while. Last story, well, semi-last story is back in Europe again. Too much United States stuff, too much Israel stuff. Let's focus on the UK. Holy shit, we haven't talked about the UK in a long time. Now, it's not the biggest news story, but it kind of just like goes back to shitting on liberals. And that is, let's talk about our boy, not our boy. Don't say that, you're gonna get people confused. Look at our boy, Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer. Wait, let me get here. I'm just pulling up this article just so I have like something in front of me, but the story we're gonna talk about is the recent press conference that he did a couple days ago, because people are urging, if you're not fully caught up, people are urging Starmer to resign due to very, very bad polling. Very, very bad election results in local elections all across the UK. Right? There were elections. I don't know if it was municipalities or provinces. Let me check because I have a whole local elections. There were local elections in local authorities. I assume it was provinces. There were elections all across the UK last week, 9th of May, and Labour, the Labour Party, has failed fucking miserably. If you look at the map, there were gains by a bunch of why do I keep saying companies? By a bunch of parties, except for the Labour Party. There were unfortunately gains by Reform UK, which is the far-right party of UK, led by Nigel Farage, this dumbfuzz little shithead on the picture that I don't know how he still is in politics. And also, good news, there were also major gains by the Green Party, especially in London, especially in like bigger cities. Now, I don't know how many seats that exactly won. It's not seats because it's not parliamentary elections, Chamber of Deputies. It's more about cities, right? It was municipal elections, if I understand, right? Control of Lewisham, Hackney Council, South London, right? Like many gains. The point being is that essentially all parties except for Labour have been making gains all across the UK, except for Labour, which has put a lot of pressure on Keir Starmer, who is the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, to resign, because you know when your party is not doing well in the entire country, it kind of sends a message that your party is not popular and it should step down. Your government in general is not popular, and it has not been popular, right? Polling data shows that the Labour government has been failing miserably for its citizens, and that is simply because the Labour government, despite its name, has been horrible, terrible for the working class. It is a joke. Since the takeover of Keir Starmer of Labour, right, there was a very famous political battle between Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn, who's been ousted from Labour after a very long process of liberalization of the party, due to his comments of Israel, actually. But this was like over 10 years ago, and because at that point there was no genocide, and it was not that common for people to talk about Israel. He was ousted for supposedly anti-Semitic comments, which was simply comments against Israel, but as we just saw, that is enough to land you the anti-Semitic mark. Jeremy Corbyn was previously the leader of Labour, now it's Keir Starmer. Now, Keir Starmer is a nothing figure. He's not charismatic. He is a lawyer, I believe he was a lawyer, and he speaks like it. He is not a charismatic figure. He simply won because everybody was fed up with the previous government. We had like many years and very weird debacle with the conservative Tory government. People wanted to change, and because of the two-party kind of structure that you guys... it doesn't have a two-party structure, but similarly to many even European countries, it ends up being a debacle between, in this case, Labour and the Tory party, conservatives. People chose Labour because of history, and now we have Labour. However, Labour has been taken over by very neoliberal forces, and that resulted in just like horrible working conditions, material conditions for the British public. No. That resulted, and Jeremy Corbyn has put this very, very well. Let me pull up the article where he actually talks about this in detail. Ah, no, that's not it. Sorry. Whoopsie. Different article. Oh, come on. I had it pulled up and everything. Aww. Okay, give me 1 second. Why did I put all the things I wanted out? Sorry, this was not planned. I forgot what the name of the site was, and because for some reason I got rid of it. Yeah, let's put some music, just distract people. Tribune, fuck me. There we go. Why the fuck was that gone? Starmer's resignation is not enough. Now, this was written by Jeremy Corbyn, who I mentioned previously. He was the leader of Labour before he was ousted by the party, essentially, the party leadership. Now, he wrote a very nice piece a couple days ago over the resignation. Well, he hasn't resigned, but people pressuring Starmer to resign over just like him not being popular, and people being the general population being fed up with his policies. Now, specifically, some of these policies include the 2-child benefit cap, which is essentially like the landmark decision that his government has made, which is essentially a policy where previously there was a policy where if you had 2 children and up, if you had 2 children and above, you would get proportionate benefits to support those. Now, however, because Keir Starmer railed against austerity, he didn't rail against austerity, but enacted a bunch of austerity measures, he got rid of that. He got rid of the 2-child limit. He implemented the 2-child limit, essentially getting rid of what was previously a policy where if you had 2 and 3 and more children, you would get proportionate social benefits for that. He got rid of that, and he made the 2-child limit. The government has scrapped the 2-child limit, which is a brilliant news for the children and families. It was the most cost-effective way to start to reduce child poverty, and 350,000 children have been lifted out of poverty as a result. He got rid of that, and as a result now, parents with more than 2 children are left to scrap for themselves. We have it right here. Are we on it? Yes. 2-child limit restricted support and universal credit to 2 children in a family. It left families without means tested support for their 3rd and subsequent children worth £3,500 a year. It was the biggest driver of rising child poverty. This is a child poverty action group in the UK. that investigates like sources or sources of child poverty. It goes on to detail how, thanks to getting rid of that policy or like enacting a limit of to children, it essentially leaves families who already had children with no social benefits or very little social benefits to strive for themselves, right? It's essentially a policy that is not really, how do I say it? It's not very uncommon for, let's say, center-left social democratic parties in all across Europe. Now, I'm trying to find what I just pulled up. There it is. Corbyn's commentary. There we go. This government chose not to bring in wealth taxes, not to implement rent controls, not to make the kind of public investment in council housing that is needed to tackle the housing crisis, and chose not to redistribute resources from those who wield it to those who need it. It chose to give its top political job to a man with an established relationship to a convicted sex offender, a man who just so happened to pride himself on his position to our mass movement for social justice and peace. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest news. Might just leave it here, because I don't know what else to really say. I mean, Keir Starmer is someone who needs very little introduction. Also, my camera is running out of battery. It's a man who has implemented austerity measures over austerity measures for his entire term, and him as a leader of the party. It is someone who has not taken a harder position on Israel. Actually, quite the opposite. Is the UK for the last couple of years has been next to Germany one of the worst, like the country in Europe linked to police brutality over Palestine, pro-Palestinian activism. Right, famous case of Palestine Action. It is a government that has implemented austerity measures all across, and it's been horrible on immigration as well. Right? It's a party that has been trying to appeal to the right by implementing just like right-wing fascist policies against Palestinian activists, against labor, against especially immigrants. But it's also been a party that has not been able to actually appeal to them because it's been captured by the far right, and it's not something that it should do. Like, the party shouldn't try to appeal to them in the first place, and it also hasn't been able to appeal to the left due to these policies. It's a party that has tried to become a catch-all party without actually implementing any beneficial policies to anyone. Alright. I might just leave it here right now because I am feeling like we've covered a lot, and I'm going to do another live stream next week, hopefully, maybe Wednesday, maybe Sunday, but we have talked about a lot of stuff today. We have we have covered a lot of ground. There's a lot more stuff to talk about that has kind of happened, but we can leave that to Wednesday. And yeah, we've had a very long live stream, almost 2 hours. Thank you to everyone for joining me. I am a little bit tired now. You can tell in my voice. So I'm going to leave it here. We're going to do another live stream next week. I'm going to have some rest. Have a good Sunday, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next week. Stay safe. Good night.